for pre-need funerals, burials, or cremation since 1975. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg. In obituary news this morning, Jimmy Stacy, age 77 of Sylacauga, died on Tuesday. Curtis and Son Funeral Home will announce the funeral arrangements for Jimmy Stacy, who died at Coosa Valley Medical Center on Tuesday. Curtis and Son Funeral Home will direct that service. Also, in obituary news this morning, graveside funeral service for John Wayne Thomas will be Friday at 11 a.m. from Evergreen Cemetery in Sylacauga. And you may, in lieu of flowers, consider donating to Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Fond memories and expressions of sympathy may be shared at curtisandsonfh.com. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, will direct that service. Visitation for Susan Harmon will be Friday from 4 to 5 o'clock at Curtis and Son North. Funeral service, a graveside service at 10 a.m. On Saturday at Midway Cemetery in Talladega. Curtis and Son Funeral Home will direct that service. Lisa K. Willis, age 54, died September the 6th. A private family service will be held at Center Hill United Methodist Church at 2 o'clock Friday. In lieu of flowers, the family asks that contribution be made to a local animal shelter or a charity of your choice. Radley Smith Funeral Home, Sylacauga, directing. Funeral service for Lucy Moore, age 78 of Sylacauga, is today at 2 o'clock at the Chapel of Radley Smith with Reverend Brian Jones officiating. Burial in the Evergreen Cemetery. Mrs. Moore died September 6th in Dothan. Visitation today prior to the service, noon until 2 at the funeral home. Radley Smith Funeral Home in Sylacauga in charge of the arrangements. Private family service for Mr. Ricardo Ricky Eaton, age 57, is Friday. And that'll be Terry's Mortuary Chapel with the Reverend Jerry Jones, the eulogist. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. Funeral service for Ronnie Brown, age 71, is Friday at 2 o'clock from the Chapel of Radley Smith Funeral Home with the Reverend Jeff Harris officiating. Burial in the Childersburg City Cemetery. Mr. Brown died September 5th at Coosa Valley Medical Center. Radley Smith Funeral Home directing. And memorial service for Delana R. Stick Blackwood, age 83, is today at 11 o'clock from Fayetteville United Methodist Church with Brother John Limbaugh officiating. The family will receive friends beginning at 10 o'clock at the church. Radley Smith Funeral Home directing. Funeral service for Janice Gail Blair, age 73 of Childersburg, will be Friday at 11 from the Chapel of Radley Smith Funeral Home. Brother David Vick officiating. Burial in the Fayetteville Cemetery. Mrs. Blair died Tuesday, September the 7th at her residence. Radley Smith Funeral Home in Sylacauga directing. And many of you may remember Janice from her days at Craddock Health Center. She was always a smiling face there, and she'll certainly be missed. And our condolences to that family. Radley Smith Funeral Home directing. Memorial service for Rosa Pearl Sparks, age 60, is Saturday at 2 o'clock from Sims Funeral Service Chapel. She was a member of the Tallahatchie Baptist Church, and Sims Funeral Home, Talladega directing. Christopher Shane Thornton, age 50, died September 3rd. The family will announce funeral arrangements at a later date. Talladega Funeral Home directing. Celebration of life for Mrs. Annie Dorothy Welch of Talladega will be 11 o'clock Saturday at Lane Chapel Cemetery. Elder James E. Samuels with a eulogy. It's strongly recommended that you bring your chair, umbrella, and mask. Visitation for Ms. Welch will be 1 till 7 o'clock Friday at the funeral home. And the family will receive friends from 6 until 7. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. S.M. Goodson Funeral Home and Crematory in Talladega will announce the funeral arrangements for James Worrells, age 79, who passed away on Wednesday. S.M. Goodson Funeral Home and Crematory in charge of the arrangements, and funeral arrangements for Shirley Ware will be announced by S.M. Goodson Funeral Home and Crematory in Talladega as well. This obituary report this morning brought to you by Curtis and Son Funeral Home. One other community note this morning: funeral service for Dora Pilot will be today at 1 o'clock That will be at Community Funeral Home in Sylacauga, burial in the Rising Star Baptist Church Cemetery, Community Funeral Home directing. And a graveside service for Mr. William Lawler will be Saturday at noon from Evergreen Cemetery. Visitation Friday from 1 p.m. until 7 p.m. at the funeral home. Community Funeral Home in Sylacauga in charge of the arrangements. This obituary report this morning brought to you by Curtis & Son Funeral Home, the North Chapel on Highway 21 in Sylacauga, and the Childersburg Chapel on Highway 280 in Childersburg. For pre-need funerals, burials, or cremation since 1975, Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.